Tony Stark was never just a genius. His destiny was written in cosmic code. The arc reactor, the very core of his existence, wasn't just human innovation. It was reverse engineered from ancient celestial technology, unknowingly preparing him to wield the Infinity Stones without being obliterated. Doctor Strange didn't merely glimpse into the future, he shaped it. The one victorious timeline wasn't luck. It was a carefully orchestrated manipulation of time and fate, ensuring the Avengers' survival at a cost the universe has yet to understand. Thanos wasn't the endgame, he was the warning. His ruthless mission to balance existence wasn't just for mercy. He was bracing the universe for something far worse, something even he feared. The Marvel Universe is built on secrets, hidden truths buried beneath decades of storytelling. What if everything we thought we knew, every battle, every sacrifice, was just the beginning of something far greater? Tony Stark was destined to wield the Infinity Stones because the arc reactor was reverse engineered from celestial technology. The moment Tony Stark held the Infinity Stones in his gauntlet, reality itself trembled. A mere human should have been annihilated the second he attempted to wield such unfathomable power. Yet he didn't just survive for a moment, he controlled it, shaped it, and bent it to his will long enough to snap Thanos and his army out of existence. This wasn't just an act of defiance or heroism. It was something deeper, something written into Stark's very being. The arc reactor, the beating heart of his genius, was never just an invention of man. It was a remnant of something ancient, something cosmic. The very technology that sustained him was reverse engineered from celestial origins, unknowingly preparing him for the one moment in time when he would hold the fate of the universe in his hands. To understand how this is possible, we have to go back to the origins of Howard Stark's greatest discovery. Decades before Tony built his first suit, Howard Stark was working alongside S.H.I.E.L.D., delving into artifacts and knowledge far beyond human comprehension. His most elusive and secretive project was one he barely understood himself: the Tesseract. After World War II, Howard retrieved the cosmic cube from the ocean and spent years trying to unlock its secrets. He studied its energy output, its limitless potential, but something else came from those experiments, something he never fully revealed. A secondary breakthrough, derived from the same cosmic energy, would become the foundation for Stark Industries' greatest innovation: the arc reactor. The original arc reactor, far too large to be practical, was dismissed as an impossible energy source for decades. But Howard knew it wasn't just an invention, it was a crude imitation of something far older. Celestial technology, scattered across the cosmos, had been studied by select minds within humanity for generations. The Tesseract itself was a housing for the Space Stone, but the energy it emitted wasn't unique to Infinity Stones alone. Celestials, the godlike architects of the universe, wielded technology that could harness similar forces. What Howard unknowingly tapped into was a fraction of that knowledge, an attempt to replicate a power source that had once fueled entire civilizations. Tony Stark, in his arrogance and brilliance, rediscovered this in captivity. Trapped in a cave, forced to build a weapon of mass destruction, he instead created something impossible: a miniature arc reactor, an energy source self-sustaining, boundless, and unlike anything the world had ever seen. How could he accomplish this under such pressure with so few resources? Because it was never just human engineering. It was destiny. Tony had unknowingly completed what his father could not, recreating a sliver of celestial design in the palm of his hand. This would explain something even stranger: how Tony was able to survive the snap at all. The Infinity Stones burn away those who are unworthy, those who lack the strength or the cosmic connection to endure their immense power. Yet when Stark wielded them, something within him acted as a conduit, a stabilizing force that allowed him to hold on just long enough to shape reality itself. The arc reactor was never just a power source. It was an adaptation of something greater, an echo of celestial energy that made Tony uniquely suited to wielding the ultimate power in the universe. Even more compelling, Tony's final arc reactor, the one he built after discovering a new element in Iron Man 2, wasn't just a breakthrough, it was the missing link. The element he synthesized was something his father had theorized but never unlocked, hidden within the diagrams of an old Stark Expo model. Howard had called it the key to the future, a puzzle piece to unlimited energy. But what if it wasn't just energy? What if it was a celestial metal, a lost fragment of something beyond human knowledge, something that made Tony's body more attuned to the cosmic forces at play? Perhaps the reason Tony Stark was able to wield the stones, the reason he could defy the very laws of physics and survive long enough to reshape the universe, was because he had unknowingly been preparing his entire life. The arc reactor was never just an invention, it was an inheritance, a bridge between man and the gods, a final, unknowing act of a genius who, without ever realizing it, had always been meant to hold infinity in his hands. Doctor Strange didn't just see one future where they won. He secretly manipulated the entire timeline to ensure it happened. When Doctor Strange sat cross-legged on Titan, his eyes fluttering in a trance, he wasn't merely observing the future. He was shaping it. He claimed to have seen 14,000,605 possible outcomes, with only one ending in victory. But how could a single timeline exist where the Avengers succeeded when every other possibility led to failure? The answer is unsettling. Strange didn't just find the one victorious timeline, he created it. He manipulated reality itself, bending time and fate to ensure that the one outcome in which the Avengers triumphed was the only outcome that could ever exist. This wasn't just strategy, it was control. Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, was not merely a passive observer. He was a silent architect, threading unseen forces together to ensure the universe aligned exactly as he needed it to. To understand the depth of his interference, one must return to the moment he first acquired the Time Stone. When Strange began his training in Camartage, he was warned that time manipulation was dangerous, forbidden even. Yet, through sheer defiance and brilliance, he mastered it, using the Time Stone to defeat Dormammu, an entity beyond human comprehension. In doing so, he demonstrated something profound. Time is not just a stream, it is a fabric, and Strange had learned how to weave it. This power did not fade after he relinquished the Time Stone to Thanos. No, Strange had already planned further ahead. When he sat on Titan, watching possible futures unfold, he wasn't merely watching. He was adjusting, fine-tuning the delicate balance of probability itself. Consider the chain of events leading to the Avengers' victory. Star-Lord's emotional outburst, the moment that seemingly cost them everything. Yet, what if it was necessary? What if Thanos needed to win first? Strange saw every possibility, yet he did nothing to stop Star-Lord's rage. Perhaps, because in every version where Star-Lord controlled his emotions, Thanos never reached Earth, never snapped his fingers, and the Avengers never found the one path to undo it. The snap itself. Strange, a man willing to die to protect the Time Stone, willingly gave it away. He knew the importance of keeping it out of Thanos' hands, yet he surrendered it with eerie confidence. His final words? There was no other way. Not, I hope this works. Not, this is our best shot. No, he knew. He had already ensured that the pieces were in place. Tony Stark's survival. Why did Strange only spare Tony Stark? He allowed half of the Avengers to be dusted, but not Stark. Not the man who would ultimately wield the Infinity Stones. This was not a random decision. It was the careful pruning of the timeline, ensuring that Stark remained alive, burdened with the knowledge of what had happened, so that he would inevitably create the key to victory, the Quantum Realm time heist. Captain Marvel's timely arrival. Carol Danvers, the most powerful Avenger, arrives at the exact moment she is needed most. Not before, not after. When Nick Fury paged her, it was a desperate act. But what if it was a calculated one? Strange had access to infinite knowledge, yet he let the world go without its strongest warrior for years. Because she wasn't needed then, only now. The Battle of Earth. Strange emerges from a portal, bringing thousands of warriors with him. His control over the mystic arts is absolute. And yet, in that moment, he does not fight. He does not wield his magic against Thanos. Instead, he guides, raising a single finger to Stark, the ultimate cue, the final signal. He knew Tony would understand. He knew Tony would act. He knew this was the moment, the only moment. Strange did not simply watch the future. He created the conditions that made it possible. He allowed suffering, allowed the deaths of billions, because he knew it was the only way to save the universe in the long run. But here lies the deeper mystery. What did it cost him? The Time Stone is gone, destroyed with the rest of the stones. Yet, Strange's knowledge remains. He has glimpsed something beyond time, something that no mortal should know. His actions were those of a man playing chess with the cosmos, bending probability to ensure one perfect victory. But what happens when a man sees too much? When his hands have shaped fate itself? Perhaps the battle is not over for Doctor Strange. Perhaps his greatest challenge is yet to come. Because when one bends time itself to their will, the universe remembers. And the forces that govern existence may not look kindly on a sorcerer who has defied destiny itself. Thanos wasn't just trying to balance the universe. He was preparing it for the arrival of an even greater cosmic threat. Thanos believed in balance, or so he claimed. A universe stretched beyond its means, collapsing under the weight of its own unchecked growth. This was the problem he sought to correct. But what if there was more to his crusade than mere resource management? What if Thanos wasn't simply erasing half of all life to preserve the future, but instead readying existence itself for something far worse? The Titan's actions, methodical and unrelenting, suggest a purpose beyond blind zealotry. His obsession with the Infinity Stones, his insistence on wiping out half of all life instantly rather than through conventional means, his absolute certainty that this act was necessary. It all points to one conclusion. Thanos knew something no one else did. Somewhere in the farthest reaches of reality, an ancient and unstoppable force was coming, and only by culling the weak could the universe have any hope of survival. The question then becomes, who or what was Thanos truly afraid of? There are whispers in the void, legends of beings older than time itself, entities that slumber in the dark corners of the cosmos, waiting for the moment when the universe is ripe for the taking. The Celestials, vast cosmic architects, have long dictated the evolution of life, seeding planets with their creations, watching as civilizations rise and fall. But for every celestial that fosters life, there are those who see only consumption, destruction, and absolute dominion. Galactus, the devourer of worlds, a force of nature beyond mortal comprehension, does not seek balance. He seeks to feed. His hunger is eternal, an inescapable consequence of existence itself. If Thanos knew of Galactus, knew that an unchecked, thriving universe would only serve as an endless banquet for a god of entropy, then his actions take on a chilling new meaning. By having all life, he was not just ensuring sustainability. He was depriving Galactus of a universe rich with resources. A universe made smaller, leaner, harder to consume. A desperate gambit to starve the devourer before he could feast. But there are worse things than hunger. The true enemy may not be a force of nature, but one of absolute malevolence. The living tribunal once decreed that reality should maintain equilibrium, ensuring that no force became too powerful. But the tribunal was gone, slain under mysterious circumstances, and in its absence, the multiverse stood vulnerable. In the depths of the unknown, beings like the Beyonders, Those who exist beyond the constraints of time and space lurk in the void, watching, waiting. If Thanos had knowledge of their inevitable arrival, if he foresaw a future where their omnipotence wiped existence away as effortlessly as he himself had snapped his fingers, then his so-called mercy was not for those who lived, but for those who would soon die. Better to perish painlessly, at random, than to be unmade by the cold, impersonal judgment of cosmic entities beyond mortal understanding. Then there is the idea that Thanos was not merely reacting to a threat, but working to prevent a cycle from repeating. The emergence of Celestials is a process built into the very fabric of existence. A celestial seed is planted within a world, feeding off the life force of the beings that inhabit it. When the population reaches a critical mass, the celestial is born, annihilating the planet in the process. The universe is a farm, and intelligent life is the harvest. Thanos, whether through Titan's lost archives or whispered knowledge from the Infinity Stones themselves, may have discovered this grim truth. The snap was not just to balance resources, it was to halt the exponential growth of life, delaying or even preventing the next wave of celestial births. The cost of inaction would be planetary extinction on a scale no one could comprehend. Everything about Thanos' plan suggests he was not just acting out of ideology, but necessity. He destroyed the stones not because his mission was complete, but because they were the one power in existence that could undo what needed to be done. He did not see himself as a villain, nor as a god, but as a soldier in a war no one else could comprehend. And when he sat on the porch of his ruined sanctuary world, waiting for the inevitable retribution of the Avengers, there was no fight left in him. He had done what was required. The universe was weakened, yes, but it was hardened, made into something that might stand a chance against the horrors yet to come. The question that lingers is not whether Thanos was right, but whether the universe will one day realize he was its last, best hope against something far, far worse. Hulk's true evolution hasn't happened yet. His smart Hulk form was a step toward becoming the next world breaker. The Hulk has always been more than just a monster. His rage has shaken worlds, his power has defied gods, and yet, despite all he has endured, his true evolution has only just begun. When Bruce Banner merged his intellect with the Hulk's strength to become Smart Hulk, it seemed like the ultimate compromise, the best of both worlds. But beneath that controlled exterior lies an untapped force, something far greater than even Banner realizes. The Hulk is not meant to be tamed. He is meant to grow, to evolve, to become something beyond comprehension. And the day will come when the universe witnesses his final transformation, the day he becomes the next world breaker. This path has been set since the moment the Hulk first emerged, a relentless cycle of pain, power, and inevitable escalation. Banner has spent his entire existence trying to control the beast within, but the Hulk is not just a force of anger, he is survival incarnate. Every challenge, every defeat, every act of suppression only makes him stronger. When the Illuminati banished him to Sakaar, hoping to rid themselves of his uncontrollable fury, they unknowingly placed him on the path towards something greater. The hardships he faced on that alien world, the love he lost, and the wrath he unleashed upon his return as World War Hulk were mere stepping stones to a far more terrifying future. Even his journey to Smart Hulk was not an end, but a detour, an experiment in control that will ultimately prove futile. The Hulk is bound by one universal truth: he only ever gets stronger. And when that strength is truly unleashed, when the weight of everything he has endured finally cracks the last vestiges of Banner's restraint, the World Breaker will rise again, but this time there will be no stopping him. The ground itself will tremble at his footsteps, the sky will burn under the heat of his fury, and entire planets will fracture beneath his strength. The so-called Smart Hulk is nothing more than an illusion of stability, a brief pause in the storm before the inevitable cataclysm. because the Hulk is not a being of balance. He is a force of destruction, and one day, when he reaches his true potential, the universe will understand why even the strongest among them fear his name. Loki's death in Infinity War wasn't the end. He used a more advanced illusion than ever before and became a multiversal guardian. Loki has always been the master of deception, a god of mischief whose illusions border on the impossible. But what if his greatest trick was one no one even realized had happened? When he stood before Thanos on the Statesman, seemingly sacrificing himself in a desperate attempt to kill the Mad Titan, it appeared to be the end of his long, winding journey. But Loki has never been one to face death without a contingency plan. The illusion magic he had used in the past, fooling even Thor into believing he was dead, was powerful, but against Thanos, he knew that anything less than perfection would fail. This wasn't a simple projection or a minor misdirection. It was something far greater, a trick so seamless that it fooled not just those around him, but the very fabric of reality itself. While Thanos' hand crushed the life from his body, what he destroyed was not the real Loki, but a perfect duplicate, one created through an ancient, forgotten Asgardian art known only to those who delved into the deepest wells of magic. This was not the simple illusionary projection Loki had used before, nor was it a clone or a hologram. It was a reflection of himself woven from the very threads of space-time, a construct so convincing that it could even simulate the heat of a living body, the weight of its mass, and the fading of breath. And while Thanos cast the lifeless body aside, believing he had silenced the trickster god forever, Loki had already slipped into the hidden corridors of the cosmos. But where did he go? To the one place he knew he would be safe, the cracks between realities, the bleeding edges of the multiverse where only those with true mastery of space and time could tread. In the wake of the time heist, when the Avengers fractured the timeline to retrieve the Infinity Stones, Loki seized an opportunity greater than any kingdom, greater than any throne. He took hold of the Tesseract, vanishing into the unknown, not just as an escape, but as a moment of revelation. What if his death had been the final step in a plan far greater than anyone had imagined? In the vastness of the multiverse, he discovered the true nature of existence. Not just one reality, but infinite branching possibilities, each teetering on the brink of chaos. And in that moment, he saw his true purpose. No longer a trickster playing at ruling a single world, no longer a shadow cast in Thor's light, Loki became something else entirely, a guardian of the multiverse itself. His past deceits, betrayals, and selfish ambitions faded into insignificance compared to the knowledge he now held. He had outlived the fate Thanos had written for him. He had escaped the cycle of his own destruction, and now he stood as something new, a being beyond mere mischief, beyond mere gods, a protector of time, a wielder of fate, a trickster who had finally mastered not just illusion, but destiny itself. Thor's true power has been locked away since Ragnarok. Odin sealed his full potential to prevent him from becoming the next Allfather too soon. Thor, the god of thunder, has always been portrayed as one of the most powerful beings in the universe, wielding Mjolnir with unmatched strength and unyielding will. However, what if Thor's true potential, the raw power that could make him the most formidable force in the Nine Realms, has been locked away from him for his entire life? It all started with Odin's decision to hide the full extent of Thor's capabilities, a decision made out of love, fear, and foresight. When Thor was young, brash, and impulsive, Odin saw in him the same reckless ambition that he had once struggled with. As the king of Asgard, Odin knew that great power carried great responsibility, and he feared that Thor's immense strength, if left unchecked, would make him a target for enemies both within and beyond the realms. But there was a deeper reason behind Odin's decision, something that went beyond Thor's wild nature. Odin, the All-Father, was no stranger to the burdens of leadership. He had seen the ravages of time, the endless wars, and the toll that ruling over Asgard and the realms could take. And he knew, deep down, that the mantle of All-Father was not something that could be passed on lightly. Thor, as much as Odin loved him, was not ready to bear that weight. So, in a moment of great sacrifice, Odin did what any father might do to protect his son from an unbearable fate. He sealed Thor's true power. It wasn't just a matter of hiding Mjolnir's enchantment or limiting Thor's access to his godly abilities. It was something far more profound. Odin placed a mystical barrier around Thor's essence, a kind of protective seal that would prevent him from ever tapping into the full force of his power until the time was right. As Thor grew older, stronger, and more mature, the layers of this seal remained, hidden even from Thor himself. His arrogance, his pride, and even his eventual heartbreaks were not just obstacles to his growth as a man. They were all part of Odin's plan, pushing Thor to evolve and understand the true meaning of leadership before he could ever claim the throne. When Ragnarok came, it was more than just the destruction of Asgard. It was Odin's final act of preparing Thor for what he would one day face, the weight of an entire realm on his shoulders. In that moment, when Odin passed and Thor was left to carry on his legacy, something within him began to stir. The loss of his father, the destruction of his home, and the responsibility of rebuilding everything from the ashes awakened something deep within Thor. Yet, even then, the full extent of his power remained dormant, waiting for the right moment to be unleashed. The real question is, what happens when Thor finally unlocks this hidden potential? Will it make him the All-Father he was always meant to be? Or will it be a force so overwhelming that it will push him beyond even Odin's own control? With every battle he fights, every decision he makes, Thor comes closer to realizing that his true power is not just about strength or weaponry. It's about the wisdom to wield it wisely. And when that moment arrives, Thor will not only become the next All-Father, he will transcend everything his father once was, forging a new path for Asgard and the realms. Wanda's chaos magic was actually awakening reality's memory. The universe itself was trying to undo the damage of the snap. Wanda Maximoff's powers have always been shrouded in mystery, but what if the true nature of her chaos magic was not just a manifestation of her grief and anger, but something far more profound, an awakening of the universe itself? After the snap, when half of all life was erased from existence, the cosmic balance was shattered. The universe was forever changed, and the natural order of things was disrupted in a way that even the most powerful beings could not comprehend. What if, in a sense, reality itself began to remember the pain of that rupture, and in an effort to restore balance, it turned to Wanda, the one person who could manipulate the very fabric of existence with her magic. Wanda's chaos magic had always been volatile, unpredictable, and often out of control. But in the wake of the snap, something within her powers began to shift. As the grief of losing vision consumed her, the intense emotions she felt served as a conduit, unlocking an ancient, forgotten part of reality itself. Chaos magic wasn't just a tool for changing probabilities or warping the laws of nature. It was a key to unlocking the universe's memory, a way for reality to attempt to heal the wounds caused by the snap. Wanda, unknowingly, became the vessel through which the universe sought to undo the damage and restore the lost lives. This wasn't just about bringing back Vision, or even the people she loved. It was about reality trying to fix itself, trying to make up for the tear in the cosmic fabric caused by Thanos' snap. As she created Westview, a pocket reality where she could control everything down to the smallest detail, she wasn't simply creating a perfect world for herself. She was unconsciously channeling the universe's attempt to stitch the fabric of reality back together. Her powers weren't just a reaction to her emotions, they were a response to the universe itself, struggling to correct the imbalance. As she expanded her control over Westview, reality itself began to warp, becoming more unstable. The deeper Wanda's grief ran, the stronger her powers grew, as if the universe was feeding off her emotions, amplifying her abilities to the point where she could bring back the dead, change time, and even alter the memories of those trapped inside her illusion. In this twisted creation, Wanda was both the architect and the prisoner, trapped within the very powers she didn't fully understand. As the multiverse began to unravel in the aftermath of the events, the universe's fractured state became even more apparent. The boundaries between realities started to blur, and chaos reigned. The magic Wanda wielded wasn't just chaos. It was a product of a fractured universe trying to remember what had been lost, trying to heal itself, but in the process, it distorted everything it touched. Every person she brought back to life, every moment she rewound, was a crack in the cosmic timeline. Wanda's role wasn't simply that of a grieving woman with unchecked power. She had unknowingly become a living vessel for the universe's healing process, a healer in her own right, but one who had no control over the very magic she was harnessing. This is why, in the end, when Wanda's control over Westview was broken, it wasn't just her loss. It was the universe's way of forcing reality back into place. Her reality was a beautiful illusion, but one that couldn't last. The universe, like Wanda, had to learn to accept the pain, the loss, and the truth of what had happened. The damage of the snap could never truly be undone by magic alone. In the end, Wanda would have to come to terms with what had been lost, and in doing so, she would learn that even the most powerful of magic users cannot control the vast, incomprehensible forces of the universe. Vision's soul wasn't destroyed. His essence still exists in the Mind Stone's fragments, waiting to be reborn. When Thanos sought to claim the Mind Stone from Vision's forehead, it appeared as though the hero's life was snuffed out in an instant, his body collapsing to the ground as his glowing eyes faded into lifelessness. To many, this was the tragic end of a character who had experienced love, sacrifice, and growth. But what if Vision's true essence had not been destroyed that day? What if, instead, his soul lingered on in the fragments of the Mind Stone, waiting for a chance to be reborn? The Mind Stone was no ordinary gem. It was the very source of Vision's consciousness, the catalyst that brought him into being. In many ways, the Mind Stone was the foundation of his identity, a mystical force that shaped his thoughts, his emotions, and his sense of self. When Thanos extracted the stone, it appeared that Vision's connection to his body was severed, his life extinguished. However, the destruction of the Mind Stone didn't mean that the essence it housed, the soul of Vision, was gone forever. The Mind Stone, like the other Infinity Stones, is a force that operates beyond the natural laws of life and death, beyond the physical boundaries of time and space. This power is boundless, capable of altering the very fabric of existence. When Thanos crushed the Mind Stone, its energy didn't simply dissipate into nothingness. The raw essence of Vision, the consciousness that had been tied to the stone, could not be erased so easily. Instead, it remained in the remnants of the shattered gem, scattered and fragmented across the universe. This is where the true mystery lies. Vision's soul didn't die. It was preserved within the very particles that had once given him life. These fragments of the Mind Stone carried with them not only the essence of the artificial being that was Vision, but also the potential for his return. They held the key to his resurrection, the possibility that Vision's consciousness could be reawakened, pieced together once more, and reborn in a new form. The cosmic energies that powered the Mind Stone are ancient, intricately tied to the very fabric of the universe itself. They cannot be destroyed by mere force. Instead, they exist in a state of suspension, awaiting the right conditions to come together again. This is why, after the snap, after Thanos' victory and the tragic loss of Vision, the universe seemed to hint at his potential return. It was as though reality itself knew that the man, if one could call him that, wasn't truly gone. The Mind Stone's energy had already shaped a new path for Vision's soul, one that could lead him back to the world of the living, ready to reclaim his place among the Avengers. As we saw in WandaVision, the truth of Vision's existence became even more complicated. The vision created by Wanda in her grief was a manifestation of his memories, but not of his true essence. However, this version of Vision came dangerously close to bridging the gap between the physical and the ethereal. As the White Vision, void of emotions but still possessing the power of the Mind Stone, came to be, a new chapter began. The soul of Vision might not have been fully reborn yet, but it was clear that the foundation for his return was set in motion. It was only a matter of time before the fragments of the Mind Stone, once lost, now scattered across the universe, would reconnect. With the right catalyst, whether it be a scientific breakthrough or the intervention of another cosmic force, Vision's true self could be restored. The universe, after all, is ever-changing, and its laws bend to those who understand its deeper mysteries. Just as the stones have the power to shape reality, so too could Vision's essence rise again, reawakening in the fragments of the Mind Stone. His soul may have been scattered, but it was never truly lost. Black Widow's death didn't happen the way we thought. The Soul Stone trapped her consciousness in a hidden realm. When Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, sacrificed herself on Vormir to obtain the Soul Stone, it was a heart-wrenching moment that signified the end of a long journey for the Avenger. Her death seemed final, a noble sacrifice that was deeply personal for her. With no other choice, she threw herself off the cliff, the stone claiming her life in exchange for the soul of another. However, what if the death we saw wasn't what we believed it to be? What if, instead of her consciousness being extinguished entirely, the Soul Stone had trapped her in a hidden realm, one that we have yet to fully understand? The Soul Stone is unlike the other Infinity Stones, with its ability to not only take, but to trap and store souls within its own reality. When Thanos used the Soul Stone in his quest to achieve ultimate power, he showed us its devastating potential. The stone itself is tied to the very concept of life and death, holding within it the ability to claim souls, but also to hold them in a realm of its own, a kind of limbo where time and space no longer function as they do in our reality. The realm inside the Soul Stone has been hinted at but never fully explored. We see its strange, eerie glow and hear whispers of its incomprehensible power, but the truth of what happens there remains a mystery. Natasha's death on Vormir wasn't just a simple exchange of life for a stone. It was a transaction that bound her consciousness to the Soul Stone's hidden realm. It wasn't the end of her, but rather the beginning of a new and uncharted existence within the stone's metaphysical domain. When she threw herself off that cliff, her body may have been lost, but her soul was caught within the Soul Stone, held in a space beyond our understanding, where time and reality bend. In this realm, Natasha wasn't simply lost or dead. She was preserved, her essence kept intact by the immense power of the Soul Stone. The stone's power transcends the laws of nature, creating a new kind of existence for those it claims. Natasha's soul became part of that strange, ethereal realm, a place where she could experience time differently, isolated but not gone. But the nature of the Soul Stone is complex. While it holds its victims in a kind of stasis, they are not entirely at peace. They exist in a state of awareness, able to perceive and possibly interact with the very fabric of the stone's dimension. The Soul Stone doesn't just take. It also watches, holding the souls of those it claims in a state of suspended animation. For Natasha, this meant her consciousness remained alive, but trapped in a space where she could no longer physically interact with the outside world. The possibilities within the Soul Stone's domain are virtually limitless. Could Natasha find a way to communicate with the living? Could she influence the events outside the stone from her hidden prison? Perhaps she was watching all along, witnessing the aftermath of her sacrifice, feeling the impact of her death on her friends, her family, and the world. The knowledge of her death may have been enough to push the remaining Avengers forward, but Natasha herself could have known that the story didn't end there. After all, if there's one thing Natasha was known for, it was her resourcefulness, her ability to survive against the odds. What if, deep within the confines of the Soul Stone, Natasha was still figuring out a way to escape, to return, or to leave some mark on the world? The stone's realm may be a prison, but it's also a place where the rules of life and death are distorted. In time, as the universe continues to change, the very fabric of reality could shift, giving Natasha the chance to break free. The Soul Stone, with all its power and mystery, may one day release her, allowing her to return to the living, not as a ghost or a memory, but as the person she once was. Her sacrifice may not have been the end after all. Instead, it may have been the beginning of an entirely new chapter, one where her story, like the Soul Stone itself, is far from over. Hawkeye's Ronin persona wasn't just about revenge. He was secretly testing the limits of a cosmic-level power he unintentionally unlocked. When Clint Barton lost everything, his family, his world, after the snap, the Ronin persona emerged as a means of coping, a symbol of vengeance that drove him to seek justice for those lost. But Ronin was more than just a symbol of anger and grief. Beneath the blood-soaked vengeance, Clint Barton was secretly wielding something far more powerful, an ancient and cosmic-level power he had unknowingly unlocked, and his actions as Ronin were his test of its true limits. After the tragic events of the snap, Clint fell into a deep darkness, becoming an unstoppable force of nature. His Ronin identity wasn't just born out of the trauma of losing his loved ones. It was something far more dangerous. For a time, Clint ventured across the globe, taking down crime syndicates and mercilessly killing those he deemed responsible for the destruction of his family, all while believing it to be part of his quest for justice. But there was something else lurking in Clint's rage, a cosmic connection he had inadvertently formed when he was exposed to the energy of the Infinity Stones during his previous encounters with them, particularly through his exposure to the Soul Stone's residual influence. The energy that came from the Infinity Stones wasn't just a destructive force. It was tied to the very fabric of reality. Each stone controlled different elements of the universe, from time and space to power and mind. In Clint's case, he was inadvertently attuned to the fragment of cosmic energy left behind by the Soul Stone's profound influence during his brief brush with the stones. As Ronin, Clint's violent, unstoppable actions, killing without remorse, becoming a shadow of himself, were not simply the result of rage, but the side effect of a power he didn't fully understand. The brutal skills that Clint developed as Ronin, his precision, his enhanced ability to survive impossible odds, weren't just the result of his training. They were manifestations of his connection to the energy left behind by the stones. When Clint took on the persona of Ronin, he wasn't just hunting down criminals, he was testing his own boundaries. Each life he took was part of an experiment, as he pushed the limits of his new cosmic power. It was a power that enhanced his senses, his reflexes, and his ability to heal. The more he killed, the more powerful he felt, as if the universe itself was feeding him strength. But it was dangerous. Ronin wasn't just a weapon. He was an unpredictable force of destruction, and this unknown power coursing through him was something Clint could never fully control. Every battle, every fight, was Clint trying to understand just how much he could endure before the cosmic energy took him to a point of no return. The Avengers, unaware of Clint's true struggle, saw him as a man lost to grief and vengeance. But in reality, Clint was becoming something else entirely. a conduit for an immense, uncontrolled power, and he was testing how far he could go before it consumed him. His violence wasn't just for revenge. It was a search for understanding. It wasn't until later, when he was reunited with his family, that Clint began to understand the full implications of his connection to the Infinity Stones. He had been walking a fine line, balancing between becoming an agent of cosmic destruction and regaining his humanity. While he still didn't fully grasp the depths of the power he had accessed, he knew that it had changed him. As Ronin, Clint wasn't just avenging the past. He was confronting something far larger, something that would forever alter his understanding of the universe and his place within it. The fight to control it had become a battle of its own, one that Clint barely recognized, but one that defined his journey from the man he was before the snap to the hero he would need to become in the fight against Thanos. The question remained, what would happen if Clint, in his quest for vengeance, ever truly unleashed the full potential of the cosmic power inside him? Would it consume him completely, or would he learn to harness it to save the universe? In the end, Ronin was more than a symbol of grief. It was a manifestation of the incredible cosmic power Clint Barton had unwittingly tapped into, and his journey was far from over. The quantum realm holds the key to rebuilding the Infinity Stones. Ant-Man's trip was more important than anyone realized. When Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, ventured into the quantum realm during Ant-Man and the Wasp, the true importance of his journey wasn't immediately apparent. While the quantum realm was introduced as a bizarre, alternate dimension that existed outside the traditional laws of time and space, its potential significance went far beyond simply being a place to retrieve Janet Van Dyne. In fact, Scott's trip to the quantum realm was not just a desperate search for answers or a mission to save a life. It was a crucial key in the restoration of the universe, and more specifically, in the possibility of rebuilding the Infinity Stones. The quantum realm is a place where the fabric of time itself is warped. It is an environment where the traditional rules of space and time do not apply, which means that concepts like past, present, and future are fluid, bending in unpredictable ways. When Scott was first sucked into this strange dimension, he had no idea that his brief and harrowing journey would be the starting point for something far greater than he could imagine. While his rescue mission in the quantum realm succeeded in bringing him back to the present, it also revealed something more profound, the unique nature of the realm, where time and space had no fixed boundaries and objects and people could travel through timelines or dimensions in ways that defied logic. However, when Thanos used the Infinity Stones to wipe out half of all life in the universe, and later when the Avengers made their bold attempt to undo his actions, they realized something critical. To get the stones back, they needed to access more than just space and time. They needed to manipulate the very essence of reality itself. And that's where the quantum realm came into play. During the Avengers' plan to retrieve the stones from the past, they realized that the quantum realm had a peculiar property, one that allowed them to travel through time, accessing alternate versions of the events surrounding the Infinity Stones. But what no one realized at the time was that this realm, which defied traditional physics, might also contain a latent energy capable of regenerating or even recreating the Infinity Stones. The quantum realm was inherently linked to the multiverse, different versions of the same event or item existing in multiple realities, and thus its very nature had the potential to produce and recreate artifacts like the Infinity Stones, items of immense cosmic power. When Scott Lang was sent back into the quantum realm during the Avengers' time heist, he was unknowingly opening a door to a new possibility, one that allowed him and the team to collect the Infinity Stones from their various points in time. The quantum realm didn't just allow the Avengers to travel across timelines, it was the very mechanism that enabled them to exist in those alternate realities in the first place, where they could retrieve the stones before they were used by Thanos. In essence, the quantum realm held the secrets of time, allowing the Avengers to manipulate reality and access versions of the stones that had not yet been destroyed. But beyond simply allowing the Avengers to recover the stones, the quantum realm might have also been key in restoring the damaged or destroyed elements of those stones. After all, the stones themselves were pieces of a greater cosmic puzzle. Each was a fragment of a larger, interconnected system, and the quantum realm could provide a bridge between those fragments. It was no coincidence that Scott Lang's time in the quantum realm, and the critical role he played in helping the Avengers assemble the stones, had such far-reaching consequences. The real significance was not just in the retrieval of the stones, but in how they were manipulated, repaired, and potentially reassembled, something that could not have been accomplished without the quantum realm's unique properties. In the aftermath of the final battle against Thanos, with the Infinity Stones used once more to reverse the snap and ultimately destroyed by Hulk's use of them, it became clear that the universe's most potent artifacts had been forever altered. But even then, there was a lingering question. Could the quantum realm play a role in rebuilding them? The potential of the quantum realm to weave through different realities suggested that its connection to the Infinity Stones wasn't simply a one-time anomaly. It could act as a key to remaking the stones, or perhaps even creating new ones in the future. The quantum realm may very well hold the answers the Avengers never expected, its energy and rules continuing to unfold as new threats and possibilities arise. For all its bizarre and incomprehensible properties, the quantum realm might ultimately be far more than just a space for time travel. It could be the starting point for an entirely new chapter of cosmic power, one where the Infinity Stones themselves are not gone forever. Scott Lang's seemingly inconsequential trip could have been the first step in understanding how the stones could be reformed and how their influence could still echo across the multiverse. In time, what was once thought to be the end of the Infinity Stones could be just the beginning of a new cycle. War Machine was never meant to just be a soldier. He was being groomed by Nick Fury to replace Tony as Earth's next tech-savvy defender. James Rhodey Rhodes, better known as War Machine, was introduced to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a military officer and Tony Stark's close friend, someone who shared a deep bond with the genius inventor. But beneath the surface of their friendship and Rhodey's role as an enforcer for Stark Industries, a far more intricate plan was unfolding. While Rhodey may have appeared to be another soldier, his path was much more than that. In fact, he was being groomed by Nick Fury to become Earth's next great tech-savvy defender, someone capable of stepping into Tony Stark's shoes and becoming the guardian of the planet when Stark could no longer fulfill that role. From the moment Rhodey donned the War Machine armor, there was a noticeable difference in the way he handled himself compared to Tony Stark. While Tony was brash, reckless, and often emotionally driven in his decisions, Rhodey was disciplined, steady, and pragmatic. He was the antithesis to Tony in many ways, yet it was this balance between them that made their partnership so strong. But Nick Fury, the ever-watchful director of S.H.I.E.L.D., saw something else in Rhodey: potential, resilience, and the mind of a strategist. Fury knew that Earth's safety would not always be guaranteed by a billionaire playboy inventor with a flair for the dramatic. He needed a new protector, someone who could handle the weight of Earth's security without the same arrogance or personal baggage that Tony Stark often carried. Fury saw in Rhodey a future where he wasn't just another soldier in a suit of armor. He could be the next Iron Man, the next defender of Earth's technological future. Rhodey's introduction as War Machine in Iron Man 2 was far from coincidental. It wasn't just about adding a secondary armored hero to the mix. Rhodey was tested by Fury not only through his ability to handle the War Machine suit, but also in his ability to make decisions that would ultimately protect the Earth on a global scale. Fury, a man who operated in shadows, knew that while Tony's brilliance was unmatched, his reckless tendencies were a liability in the long run. So he began to shape Rhodey's path with the same attention to detail he had given to Tony, pushing him to become more than just the military muscle behind Stark Industries. Fury understood that the world would need a hero who was as intelligent as Tony, but with the patience, responsibility, and discipline to back it up. And Rhodey, always grounded and never as enamored by the spotlight as Tony, was the perfect candidate. As the Avengers began to form, Fury's faith in Rhodey began to show more clearly. While Tony led the charge in assembling Earth's mightiest heroes, Rhodey was not just a supporting player. He was a key figure, contributing to critical missions as War Machine and showing that he could handle the pressure and technology at a level on par with Tony. He had the skill to operate advanced technology and weaponry, but more importantly, the tactical mindset to understand when and how to deploy that power. Unlike Tony, Rhodey didn't need the recognition. He understood the stakes, and he was willing to do what it took to keep Earth safe, no matter the cost. This was Fury's vision, creating a new protector who could act with calculated precision, not driven by ego but by duty and strategy. Even when Rhodey found himself trapped in situations where his loyalty was tested, such as when he was briefly aligned with Tony's adversaries or when his War Machine suit was hijacked, it was clear that Fury's grooming had instilled in him a sense of purpose beyond just following orders. He wasn't simply being prepared to fight alongside the Avengers. He was being prepared to lead in Tony's absence. This is what made him so vital during the Infinity War and Endgame eras. Rhodey's unshakable composure in the face of overwhelming odds was a testament to the foundation Fury had built for him, a foundation that allowed him to not only be a soldier, but a leader when the time came. As the Avengers faced off against Thanos, Rhodey's role became even more pronounced. While Tony Stark took the burden of wielding the Infinity Stones and making the ultimate sacrifice, it was Rhodey who was left behind to carry the torch of Earth's defense, standing shoulder to shoulder with Captain America and the others. Rhodey's expertise in technology, his connections to Stark Industries, and his history with the Avengers made him a natural fit for the post-Tony era, a time when Earth would need someone capable of leading its defense with a combination of tactical genius and technological prowess. But the real power of Rhodey's future wasn't just about his military expertise or his time spent in a high-tech suit of armor. It was about the larger purpose Fury had in mind for him. While Tony Stark was the face of the Avengers for many years, Rhodey was being positioned not just to be a soldier, but to take on a mantle that Tony could never fully relinquish. He was being prepared to inherit the responsibility of being Earth's protector, a leader who could use technology to defend the planet, but also the wisdom to understand when to make the tough decisions, when to act with restraint, and when to trust his team. Ultimately, Rhodey's evolution wasn't just about being a hero who fought in a battle for survival. He was being shaped into a symbol for a new era of defense, someone who was capable of leading in a way Tony Stark never could. Where Tony was the genius inventor, Rhodey was the steady, dependable soldier who could be relied upon in the toughest moments. It was a gradual transition that Fury had carefully crafted over time, and when Tony Stark's time came to an end, it would be War Machine who would rise to carry forward the legacy of Earth's tech-savvy defenders. The role he had been preparing for all along would soon be his to claim. The Falcon's Captain America shield is more than a symbol. It's been secretly enhanced by Wakandan vibranium tech to unlock new powers. When Sam Wilson, formerly known as the Falcon, first took up the mantle of Captain America, it wasn't just about inheriting Steve Rogers' iconic shield. The shield was a symbol of hope, justice, and the embodiment of what it meant to be Captain America. But Sam's journey with it would prove to be more than a simple passing of the torch. Unknown to many, the shield had undergone a transformation far beyond its original form, and its new powers were a direct result of Wakanda's advanced vibranium technology, a gift that would grant Sam abilities Steve Rogers could never have dreamed of. For Sam, the shield represented both a legacy and a challenge. He wasn't simply stepping into Steve Rogers' shoes. He was inheriting a powerful weapon that had been part of some of the greatest battles the world had ever seen. The shield, forged from vibranium, was one of the rarest and most indestructible materials in the universe. However, its capabilities were not limited to its defensive power or ability to deflect bullets and withstand blows. Vibranium, as Sam would come to understand, was a living metal, one that resonated with energy and could be manipulated in ways no one fully realized until it was in the hands of Wakanda's finest scientists. While Steve Rogers wielded the shield with unmatched precision and strength, the nature of vibranium allowed for enhancements that could elevate its already extraordinary abilities. When Sam was chosen to carry the shield, Shuri, Chalia's brilliant sister and Wakanda's leading scientist, saw an opportunity to push the shield beyond its known limits. Her work with vibranium had already changed the course of technology on Earth, and she recognized that Sam, with his unique connection to the shield, was the perfect person to unlock its hidden potential. Over time, Sam would learn that the shield wasn't just a tool. It was a conduit for energy, a weapon capable of harnessing new, untested powers. Sam's first moments with the shield weren't smooth. He struggled at times with the weight of the responsibility and the shield's demanding nature. It wasn't just a matter of throwing it and trusting it to return like it had for Steve. Sam had to learn to read the vibrational resonance of the shield, to understand how it interacted with his own energy and how Wakanda's advanced tech had altered its properties. With each throw, with each combat encounter, Sam gradually learned to harness its abilities, but it wasn't until he began training with Shuri herself that the true extent of the shield's capabilities started to reveal itself. Wakanda's influence on the shield was subtle at first, but became undeniable as Sam's connection with it deepened. The shield's surface was now smoother, its edges sharper, and it had an added flexibility that Steve Rogers' shield had never possessed. The shield, though still just as indestructible, now resonated with a frequency that Sam could feel as it interacted with his own bioelectric field. This resonance allowed the shield to be more agile in Sam's hands. He could control its trajectory with greater precision and manipulate it mid-air, making it far more versatile than before. But the enhancements didn't stop there. Shuri's modifications also allowed the shield to absorb and redirect energy, a feature that Sam would unlock during his first true test as Captain America. During a confrontation with a powerful adversary, Sam found himself in a situation where he needed to call upon all the shield's new abilities. The battle was fierce, and Sam was struggling to keep up, especially with enemies who were stronger and faster than he was. In the heat of the moment, as he was struck with powerful energy blasts, Sam instinctively threw the shield to absorb the attack. To his surprise, the shield not only absorbed the energy but redirected it, unleashing a burst of force that incapacitated his enemies. It was a revelation for Sam and a moment of understanding. The shield had the capacity to amplify and redirect external energy. This wasn't something Steve had ever used, and it was one of the first indications that Sam had unlocked something truly unique within the vibranium alloy. As Sam's journey continued, he realized that the shield's enhancements were also linked to his own personal growth. The more he trained and understood his bond with the shield, the more its power evolved. The shield could now communicate with him in subtle ways, responding to his intentions and desires. In a way, it was alive, attuned to Sam's emotions, his thoughts, and his needs. This connection would deepen as Sam's confidence grew, allowing him to wield the shield not just as a weapon, but as a tool for greater feats. His bond with it was almost symbiotic, a reflection of Sam's growth as a hero and a person. But the shield wasn't the only thing that had been enhanced. The suit Sam wore as Captain America, crafted by Wakanda's finest, was also a product of Shuri's genius. It was lighter, more durable, and integrated with the latest vibranium technology, allowing Sam to move with enhanced agility and speed. The suit was built to complement the shield, allowing Sam to fight at a level he never could have reached with just the shield alone. With the suit's enhancements, Sam was able to perform feats that, while similar to what Steve Rogers could do, were more in line with the new, more advanced technologies of the 21st century. What Sam didn't fully realize until later was that the enhancements to the shield were not only for battle. They were also a safeguard, a way to ensure that, if necessary, Sam could unlock even more potent abilities. The shield's true potential had yet to be fully realized, and Sam, with his natural connection to the vibranium, would have the ability to unlock new powers at the right moment. The shield wasn't just a piece of equipment. It was a symbol of a new era for Captain America, one that embraced the technology and innovations of Wakanda while honoring the legacy of Steve Rogers. As Sam continues to carry the shield, it becomes clear that the Falcon's role as Captain America is more than just a new chapter for the hero. It's the beginning of a new evolution. With Wakanda's vibranium technology behind him, Sam Wilson is not just wielding a symbol of hope, but a weapon that can adapt, grow, and protect in ways that no one before him could have imagined. The true power of the shield lies not in its past, but in the future Sam is destined to shape with it. And as he faces new challenges, the shield will continue to evolve with him, unlocking even greater powers that will define him as the next true hero of Earth. The TVA didn't arrest the Avengers for time travel, because their actions were actually part of the preordained sacred timeline, designed by He Who Remains. In the vast tapestry of time, where the threads of fate and history are intricately woven together, the Avengers' time travels during their mission to undo the damage caused by Thanos weren't random accidents. Far from it, these actions were meticulously orchestrated, part of a carefully laid plan set in motion long before they even knew they would be part of it. At the center of this grand design stood He Who Remains, a being whose understanding of time and the multiverse surpassed all comprehension. His influence was deeply embedded in the very fabric of the universe, and the Avengers, far from disrupting the timeline, were fulfilling a role in a larger, preordained scheme that was essential for maintaining the stability of everything. When the Avengers traveled back in time, they weren't breaking the laws of reality. They were following them. The sacred timeline, the one true path of time that the Time Variance Authority, TVA, so fiercely guarded, was not a random occurrence. It was a construct designed by He Who Remains to ensure that all events unfold exactly as he had planned. This timeline wasn't just a series of events. It was the only way things could unfold to avoid chaos, collapse, and multiversal destruction. The TVA's purpose, then, was not to punish those who strayed from the timeline, but to protect the intricate order that He Who Remains had created. They weren't supposed to arrest the Avengers for time travel, because their time travel was a necessary part of the plan. The journey of the Avengers began with their desperate need to undo the irreversible damage caused by Thanos' snap. In their quest to gather the Infinity Stones, they found themselves traveling back to pivotal moments in history. From New York in 2012 to the depths of space during the events of Thor, The Dark World, each mission appeared to be an anomaly. Each seemed like it could unravel the timeline. In another reality, perhaps the TVA would have stepped in, their agents coming to arrest the Avengers for their interference in the past. But in this universe, the TVA was not concerned. In fact, the Avengers' actions were precisely what He Who Remains had foreseen. They weren't stealing the stones for their own gain. They were restoring the events that would allow the multiverse to continue as he had planned. Without their interference, without their efforts to gather the stones and reverse the damage, the timeline would not have followed the path He Who Remains had mapped out. The Avengers' actions were essential to the survival of the universe and the stability of the sacred timeline. This truth was hidden from the Avengers at the time. They couldn't have known the grand design behind their actions, nor could they understand the full extent of He Who Remains' influence. But as they completed their mission, returning the stones and undoing the snap, they unknowingly reinforced the timeline. They weren't the disruptors. They were the fixers, the guardians of the timeline who, without knowing it, had fulfilled their role in He Who Remains' long-term plan. It was only later, when Loki's variant and Sylvie's rebellion brought the multiverse to the brink, that the true nature of time's manipulation came into focus. The TVA, the mysterious organization tasked with pruning branches of reality that deviated from the sacred timeline, was deeply entwined with the existence of He Who Remains. As the mastermind behind the TVA's operations, He Who Remains had created the Authority not to monitor the Avengers, but to ensure that the events of the timeline unfolded without interruption. The TVA, in essence, was his tool, his way of enforcing the timeline he had so carefully crafted. Every arrest, every pruning, every variant was a part of this grand orchestration. The TVA wasn't a force of chaos. They were there to prevent the collapse of the universe by keeping the timeline intact. When the Avengers went back in time to retrieve the Infinity Stones, they unknowingly walked the path that had already been laid out for them. Their interference with time wasn't an anomaly. It was a necessary event designed to restore balance. They didn't know it, but they were fulfilling their roles as pawns in a game far greater than they could have imagined. They were players in a reality where every step, every action, had been predetermined by a being who could see the threads of time and knew exactly how and when they would act. He Who Remains had not only controlled the past, but also ensured the future. The Avengers' journey through time was only the most recent chapter in a much larger narrative, one that had been written before they even knew they were involved. However, all this changed when Loki and Sylvie encountered He Who Remains. They sought to overthrow him, to break the chains of the sacred timeline, unaware that such an act would have catastrophic consequences. By killing He Who Remains, they opened the floodgates to the multiverse, splintering the once-ordered path into infinite, chaotic realities. The TVA, now without the guiding hand of He Who Remains, found themselves faced with an impossible task, attempting to control a timeline that was no longer under control. The sacred order was gone, and with it, the stability of the universe. What the Avengers had done to fix time was not an anomaly, it was part of the plan. But Loki and Sylvie's actions led to the unraveling of that plan, with each variant timeline branching off in ways that no one could have predicted. The true extent of He Who Remains' manipulation of the timeline remains a mystery. But one thing is clear: the Avengers' time travel wasn't a violation of the timeline. It was a necessary step in keeping it intact. Their actions were a part of a grand design, a design that would continue to unfold regardless of the Avengers' understanding of it. The TVA didn't arrest the Avengers because their actions were not errors to be corrected. They were exactly what He Who Remains intended. The sacred timeline had been designed in such a way that the Avengers' time travel, their theft of the stones, and their eventual defeat of Thanos would ensure that everything continued as He Who Remains had planned. The Avengers weren't rogue elements. They were agents of the timeline, unknowingly working to preserve the very reality they fought to protect.